Hello and welcome. In this lecture, you will look at the definition of the Kubernetes deployment for the REST API server. Let's get started. Like the ReplicaSet, you can also scale a deployment to change the number of pods in it. Actually, the deployment manages a ReplicaSet under the hood. A deployment also provides you with more features. Let's see some of those additional features. You can define a deployment strategy such as rolling update. This strategy updates your pods gradually to limit risk and avoid downtime. Monitor the status of a deployment while the updates take place, for instance from v1 to v2. See a history of revisions of a deployment. Roll back a deployment to a previous revision. You will apply these features in the next few labs in this course. Therefore, it is recommended to use a deployment instead of a replica set. Take a look at the backend-deployment-v1.yaml file under the K8 directory. The file looks similar to the ReplicaSet file backend-replicaset.yaml. Let's put them side by side to check similarities and differences. First, the similarities. Just like the ReplicaSet, the deployment identifies the pods it needs to create and/or maintain using labels. Specifically, the selector section identifies which pods the deployment owns, and the template section defines the specification of the pods the deployment creates. With these identifiers and pod specifications, any pod that has labels app equals Fibonacci and tier equals backend will fall under the control of the deployment Fibonacci-backend-deployment. Then the differences. To define a deployment, we use the kind deployment. We also chose to have 5 replicas in the deployment, where in the replica set we had 3 replicas. The other difference with the deployment YAML file is the annotations section. Think of this as an identifier to the deployment. We will see how this will be useful when we list deployment history in a later lab. That's it for this lecture. You have learned the additional features the deployment adds on top of a replica set and checked the definition of the Kubernetes deployment for the REST API server. Head over to the next lab where you will create the Kubernetes deployment for the REST API server.